What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are back with Absolute Green Lantern, where we finally get to see the Absolute Red Lantern, and it's amazing. Now, here's the thing that I need to specify ahead of time, because it's something that really seemed to throw a lot of people off, at least it's what it looked like in the comment section, which is this new quote-unquote emotional spectrum. One of the things that I wanted to kind of instill in you guys in the last video is you have to walk away from the emotional spectrum as you know it from the main DC universe. This is almost completely and totally different from that. The way this works is you kind of have 4 levels, and this is the important thing to keep in mind here, because what we're going to talk about here in a minute is going to kind of shift that, right? You've got Cord, Rao, Sur, and R, right? Chaotic action, restraint from action, correct action, and total understanding. And so the internet has kind of latched on to this simple and almost elegant explanation for how this works, that it's almost kind of like a traffic light system, right? Chaotic action is the traffic lights not working, so cars crashing into each other, different things like that. Rao being restrained from action, meaning red, is stop. Green, of course, means go, correct action, do whatever it is that you have to do. And then yellow, total understanding, right? Caution, keep an eye out, understand the situation before you commit to any particular thing. Now again, this is an important thing because this is an order that they're giving us. It's a hierarchy, right? Cord, Rao, Sur, R. Chaotic, restraint, correct, understanding. This is the entire philosophy of the various levels of light. Beyond that, within each and every one of these, you have a ranking system. So Cord has a ranking, Rao has a ranking, Sur and R have a ranking. And they're pretty straightforward, right? You have Abin, which is basically an adept, right? The person who knows how to manipulate whatever their light basically is. And then you have an Ain, who is initiated. So think of it almost like a Jedi Padawan, and then like a Jedi Knight. A Knight is not quite a master, so Obi-Wan Kenobi, when he was a Jedi Knight, was nowhere near as strong as Master Yoda, and never was, but he still had a pretty solid understanding of the Force, whereas Anakin Skywalker, when he was first trained to become a Jedi, was a Padawan, so he didn't fully understand the Force, but he was learning how to use it. And so with that out of the way, what this is going to do is give us the inverse of that, right? The other side views it differently. And so the way this opens up is it says, the journey begins with understanding the true nature of enlightenment, useless philosophy and worthless in the real world, fool's gold. From there, we progress to action, but still chained by notions of right and wrong, still too inexperienced to know there's no such thing, still too green. Even when we understand that we can make the right and we decide the wrong, we hold ourselves back. We see this truth as dangerous, a red flag. And yet, if we allow it to, full understanding can arise within us, the black star shining with the light of rationality and the fire of pure will. Now, what this means is that unlike what Jon Stewart was explaining to Hal Jordan and Sojourner Mulane and all those different guys, with regards to the order that I just gave you, the other side sees it the other way around. That total enlightenment is not actually enlightenment, it's willful ignorance. That the only real truth in the universe is chaos, right? Chaos is the only thing that really matters. So instead of Cord being the lowest rank, this group sees Cord as the highest rank, and that group are the Black Stars. Specifically, the one that we're shown here is Mogo along with a few others. Now, this is kind of a huge twist because in the main DC universe, Mogo is a planet-sized Green Lantern. He's a good guy. But when he shows up, he says, I am Mogo. I speak the doctrine of Mu. I have the authority given by the controller of Mu, and I uphold the law of Cord. You are J586. You have trespassed against the law of Cord. Black Star intelligencers have detected 3 subversives inside your sphere of influence, cultists of Oa. Despite direct entreaties, you have chosen not to surrender them. And that's where the occupants of this world, who are clearly an allusion to Alan the Alien from Invincible, they basically beg forgiveness, right? That the idea is that these 3 individuals who have been hiding on this world are on a world with billions of people. And so the the argument's kind of made here. Look, right, we did not disobey the edicts of the Black Stars. We are a world of 7 billion souls, mighty Mogo. They are 3 beings. We looked for them, but we could not find them, and we did not think that you would come in person. But the response of Mogo is pretty heartless here, right? He says, where the law of cord is broken, the sin must be corrected. When the law of cord is ignored, the sin of one becomes the sin of all. Such is the law of cord. And that's where the Black Stars basically realize that the 3 Green Lanterns who were on this world are now emerging and showing up to try to protect this world from the Black Stars. Now, one of the things to know is that this is leaving us with a lot more questions than it's answering, which is kind of the nature of Al Ewing. So if you find yourself asking stuff, it's natural. That's what Al Ewing does. But when the 3 of them show up here, one of which is a citizen of this world, the statements here are made: maintain correct action. Abins of the green level, existence has not ended yet. Be ready. They are opening a cage craft. They're deploying a black hand. So basically, they're equivalent of a Lantern Corps member. And that's where Karina, right, one of these lanterns, goes in for the attack and is immediately killed, only for us to find out this is Kilowog. The person who killed her is Kilowog, which is kind of mind-blowing here, because in the main DC comics, Kilowog is one of the most hardcore Green Lanterns you're ever going to find. That guy is a believer. And number 2, he's the drill sergeant for the Green Lantern Corps. So when you're given a Green Lantern ring and you're whisked off to the planet Oa and you learn to become what it means to be a Green Lantern, that's the guy who's training you. It's cool to see that he's still calling people poozers, but the fact is, this guy is hardcore. So the fact that he's a villain, seemingly, depending on how you want to look at it, it's kind of fascinating, because in that moment, the statement is just made, unfortunate. And that's where the other lantern says, he's an Abin Cord, Medfill, a weaponer. Killing is what they do, but he is chaotic action. We are correct action. We can beat him. Have understanding. As the stream around the rock we flow. And that's where this guy says, I have understanding. Now, here's where you kind of get a better idea and a better handle on what's happening here. With these 2 opposing factions, one of them, for lack of a better word, worships chaos. The other group, these Green Lanterns, worship total enlightenment. And so they basically have inverse belief systems, which is why they say, because we are pursuing total enlightenment and those who channel the power of Cord are at the lowest level, we are a higher rank in terms of power, therefore we are more powerful than them. Whereas the opposite is actually going to prove to be true here. And we'll talk about why here in a second, because we just covered it in Absolute Evil. So what ends up happening is that when the Green Lanterns make this move against Kilowog, he just kind of acknowledges, right? Like, look at that. You bloodless greenies are learning tactics. Only you can't come at me 3 ways. There's only 2 of you now, and I have 2 hands and 3 fingers, and basically fires off tendrils. Right now, one of the cool things that you see here is that Medfill, one of these guys, can make himself intangible. Now, the cool thing about the Green Lantern mythos in DC Comics is that technically Green Lanterns can do this. They can make themselves intangible. It's very rarely ever shown in DC Comics, but it does happen from time to time. More often than not, you just see them forming hard-light constructs, because the reality here is that for us as readers, we want to see hard-light constructs. If you do show us a lantern going intangible, it's cool in the moment, but we want to see them fight. We don't want to see beams of light passing through them, right? So again, that's where Medfill just says, be without fear, Arisia. This is Arisia from the main DC universe, right? It's her character, just one of the very many Green Lanterns out there that's kind of a mainstay in the DC universe through a variety of different media, right? Justice League, the Green Lantern show, so on and so forth. But he says, even a weaponer cannot kill what he cannot touch, only for us to find out that he can. He can actually penetrate an intangible being, and in fact cuts off the arm of Medfill. And that's why he says, chaotic actions, Pooters, that's the light of the Black Star. And he says it cannot be fought, it cannot be tamed, it cannot be contained. It's the power the universe runs on, the dark circle all around that is, and it obeys our will. You should have run, little Abin. Attacking me, that was just bad judgment. Now, here's why this statement matters, because Arisia, of course, fires back and basically blows Kilowog to pieces, like incinerates his head. Here's the reason why that matters, because one of the things that we learned in Absolute Evil is that Absolute Joker had seemingly figured out that Darkseid is the one behind the creation of this universe. What is Darkseid? Darkseid's a villain, so it's a universe predicated on villainous tendencies, which means, of course, chaotic action is going to be the most powerful form of action, as opposed to what the Green Lanterns believe, which is that it's the weakest form of action. That's why these Green Lanterns were just single-handedly destroyed. But it is also important to understand here, we're only 7 issues into this run, this issue being the 7th. So Al Ewing hasn't really had enough time to kind of show us the full landscape here. He's essentially given us a look through the keyhole, and that's about it. Once this door opens and we get to fully see what's on the other side, God only knows what that's going to look like. But the fact is, right, that Arisia, after having killed Kilowog, simply just says, this is Arisia Robb, right? I speak to Oa. Existence was ended for the weaponer Kilowog of Bolavax Vic. I will now remove our Green Lantern from J586 in the hope that they can restore him or something like that. We don't know what she was going to say next, because it turns out that Kilowog's not dead, right? He was like, hope. There's no hope. Hope is dead. There is only will. Now, in the middle of this, we switch back to the citizens of this world who are literally begging Mogo not to destroy them. The other part of this is they realize that the other lanterns being on this planet was for a reason, because one of them says, an object fell from the sky onto one of the eastern groves, a rural city. The object is composed of a squat cylinder and 2 connecting blocks cast in a green metamaterial. And that's when they realize the lanterns were here because they were recruiting. And so that's why they understand that Mogo is here to destroy them. And they beg yet again, right? We're a world of 7 billion people. Please don't kill us. But Mogo just simply says no and annihilates the entire planet. And so at that point, everybody's kind of looking on, and it's just like, wow, like, holy hell. Not only that, the Blackstars basically realize that, like, the Green Lantern construct, for lack of a better word, right? The judgment process, the one that we saw in the beginning of the story on Earth, it was actually there the entire time. It was simply just camouflaged. But because of the fact that the last lantern that's here had been killed by Kilowog, right? So, like, the death of Arisia, the camouflage failed. And at that point, they can destroy it. And in fact, Kilowog confirms this, right? He says, I found a decent-sized chunk right here in the outer rubble, Commander. This lantern's dead. So any baby insurgents those religious freaks were training up, they're dead too. Mogo strikes again. And so in that moment when he's talking to the Blackstars, the ship explodes when there's a streak of red that just comes flying in, and Kilowog has no idea what's going on, right? He's like, command, he's just kind of strung out there by himself. And you end up seeing this red light show up and immediately attack him. And this guy just says, sorry, I'm late. And he says, sphere. And Kilowog's kind of blown away, right? He's like, those were black stars that you killed. You killed a black star. You can't just do that. Yet again, this guy attacks him and he says, you know the red level of light, of course, the red power. It's defensive in nature. To the initiate, the Ain Rao, it imparts a degree of strength and control over bodily process, up to and including changes in form. And he says the adept of the red light, however, the Abin Rao, they can create constructs of surprising durability. To gain this power through Oa requires displays of restraint, so it is never taught as a means of attack. But I am Tomar Re, who is anomaly. I did not receive the red power through the teachings of Oa, Kilowog of Bolavax Vic. I stole it, so I do not have to restrain myself at all. And so at that point, he encases Kilowog in a construct box. He just says, large box. And then Kilowog begs, and he just says, small box. Crushes this guy down and takes off, right? He just says, back to Mogo now, small box, and give the face of steel my warmest greetings, and leaves. And so at that point, the small box just goes flying back all the way to Mogo. And that's where you pick up with this person who was giving the monologue at the beginning of the story. And he asks, what was I talking about? And he says, yes, will. Will is the black star that powers the universe. Not what the Owens teach, not understanding, not enlightenment. will, and only will. Only Mu. And through the power of Mu, we gain the will to do what must be done. But in that moment, the red box shows up that basically houses Kilowog's poor soul. And this guy just says, right, what's entering without knocking? A small cube. And what are you for, small cube? And then he realizes Kilowog's inside. He just says, poor Kilowog, compressed beyond the Black Hand's ability to heal. I warned him of overconfidence and the greetings of Tomar Re. One anomaly drawing fire for another, I suppose, trying to get me looking in your direction. It will not work, Tomar Re. I've already noticed the other Tomar, the green one. Now, the one that he's referring to, right, is Sojourner, because Tomar is the title given to a person who was not chosen to wield any of the lights of power, but somehow took it for themselves. And that's what happened with Sojourner. She didn't intend to, she didn't even realize she was doing it, but she took the green power away from Abin Sur, that Green Lantern. And so that's why she is now a Tomar. And so this guy says, and an anomaly at the green level is more dangerous than you could ever be if allowed to grow. And so there is a little bit of a kind of interlude here where you find out that this guy basically has the Absolute Universe version of Starro basically on his chest, kind of recording everything. And then he talks about how it really can't differentiate between scripture and confidential information. And so he just destroys it, right? And so he kind of gets back to talking about what's going on. He says, I'll record the closing paragraph myself. Let us then talk about Mu, the maker and unmaker. Some would say a synonym for the Omega and Alpha, but in the right order. Alpha does not come after Omega in nature. Light does not come at the end of all struggles. Only the long dark. That is simply how the world is after all. Red in tooth and claw, bloody and terrible. What is understanding in the face of that? What is correct action? Why, what we will is correct. That is why those who reach the gold level, no matter how gifted, can only rise to initiate. One cannot believe that the Owen way is right and rise any higher than an initiate. So there is only one Abin of the gold power, and I find myself walking the left-hand path because we find out this guy who's talking is Sinestro. It's the Absolute Universe version of Sinestro. We finally get him in the Absolute Green Lantern universe. Yeah, man, this comic is nuts. Like, Al Ewing is phenomenal. This is one of those stories that Al Ewing's doing where we're probably going to have to wait like another 10 issues for it to all make sense and finally tie together. He's very meta when it comes to writing these kinds of stories, but I am very excited to see where this ends up. So, with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, drop a like. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.